Hello, welcome back to Quilts Bloom at Dawn. Today we're going to pick back up with our pumpkin picking pattern. Last week we worked on getting all of our cuts made, and today the plan is we're going to work on making all of our small blocks. So I'll be demonstrating that in a few minutes, and you see I've got my tray still loaded here, ready to go. So we'll get started on that in a few minutes. But I wanted to share a couple other things that I've been working on. One of them is, of course, our Galway Bay pattern with all of our lighthouses. Last week you saw it on the design board, but I had yet to put any of it together. Well, I have been very busy this week working on getting all of the blocks put together. I went on ahead and put on the side borders. I will lay this out for you to see a little bit later. It's quite large, so you probably won't be able to see the whole thing. It's literally bigger than my design board. So I'll just show a larger section of it here on this table at the end of the video. Before we get started making the blocks for our pumpkin picking pattern, I wanted to just share a couple other things I've been working on this week. And one of those is the Goose and Gander quilt. This is an It's So Emma pattern, and I purchased the kit from Fat Quarter Shop a while back. I had fallen in love with this pattern from the first time I saw it, using the Sandalwood collection by Three Sisters. Fell in love with it and really had been planning on making the pattern, and then they put the kit on this incredible sale. I couldn't pass it up, so I just purchased the kit from the Fat Quarter Shop, had everything I needed right in there. I don't typically buy a lot of kits, but I did go ahead and get that one because it was on such a great sale. Included in this kit was a roll of the triangles on a roll, as well as the paper for making the flying geese, the foundation paper piecing. I've done a little bit of this, but I haven't spent a lot of time doing foundation paper piecing. So I decided to go ahead and embrace it. I went on ahead and went with it since it was included in the kit. I decided I'm going to go ahead and make this entire quilt using what was included. So I used many of these flying geese foundation paper pieces, as well as the triangles on a roll. And I thought I would just give you my thoughts on using that foundation paper as it compares to some of the other things that we've been doing to try to improve our accuracy. So I've been working on this all week, and you can see I've got my flying geese made right here, a whole stack of them. The pattern calls for a border of flying geese all the way around. So you could imagine it takes a lot of these to make that. So I was actually very thankful to have this paper to make those. It was actually pretty easy to do, and what I'm quite impressed with is the level of accuracy that you're able to achieve when you use that foundation paper. Here's just some of the star blocks that I did, and again, it's just everything is so on point. Everything measures out just like you want it to. So I was just really pleased with the level of accuracy that you're able to achieve when you use foundation paper. You can see the pinwheel is made up of 4 half-square triangles, and again, those were made using the triangles on a roll. So I'm still working on this quilt, but I've completed all of the sections that I needed to make all the flying geese using the paper, as well as the triangles on a roll. Overall, my impression after using the paper is very positive. It definitely gets lots of points on its side when it comes to accuracy. Even when I starch and do all the things that I know to do to make my flying geese and half-square triangles come out as perfectly as they should, I still would say the level of precision when you use the foundation paper piecing is just unmatched. So that's definitely a point in the column for the foundation paper. It's also relatively quick to do the foundation paper piecing. As far as actually putting your fabric, attaching it to the paper, and then sewing it, that's all easy. What I don't love about it is you have a lot of paper you're going to have to tear away once you finish sewing it. It's not hard to do. It just takes a few minutes to do all of it. And I just don't enjoy that part. My overall thought is if I only have a few half-square triangles or flying geese, then I would probably just go ahead and sew it like I normally do using the methods that I've always used. However, if I'm working on a project where I'm literally making a stack like this of all of these flying geese or many half square triangles, there is real advantage to going on ahead and taking advantage of this foundation paper piecing method. So I'm likely going to begin to incorporate this more, and I'm really glad that I actually have some leftovers. So I still have, this is the 2" by 4" flying geese paper, and I actually already had purchased some of this, but now I have 2 rolls where it basically makes a total of 8 2.5" half square triangles, and then it would be 2 inches finished. So I have lots of this paper, so I really would think I'm going to make more of an effort to begin to incorporate this when I'm working on projects. Another drawback to this though is simply the amount of fabric that you would need. So to make this, you would basically need 2 6.5" squares, but then that would yield 8 half square triangles. So you just have to bear that in mind. Obviously, if you're using something like a Jolly Bar, well, this would not be enough. Certainly a jelly roll wouldn't work. You would just have to factor this in when you're determining what you're going to be using as your source of fabric. So I plan to continue working on this project. This is one that I'm not actually doing on a video, but I will end up showing the progress as I go along. And I'll go ahead and show a picture now just so you can see where I'm at in the process. So you can see I've been working on making, again, all those half square triangles, the flying geese. I was able to turn those into all the stars that I needed. I also made the large center star, and I did not use any paper for that. It wasn't really that hard to do. It was fairly large pieces, so that wasn't hard to do at all. And I did make one change. So on this, you see all the little squares. They have you actually, according to the pattern, cut each square and you would sew them together. Anytime I could turn something into a strip set, I look for opportunities to do that. So this was a great opportunity to just turn this into strip sets. So that is what I did when I worked on this project, and I was able to make it pretty quickly. That much of it is done. And then obviously you see I've got all of my flying geese cut, and I even have the other stars that I'm going to need. So really it's just putting it all together at this point. This quilt is really just a lot of borders. So that's what I'll be focused on, is finishing this out now that I have really everything cut and all the blocks are really made. So I'm just going to be putting this together. So I'll be working on that this week, and hopefully I'll have that ready to show on the next video. But I thought I would continue using some of this sandalwood collection by 3 Sisters. And this is just, again, some of the fabrics here that you can see. It's such a beautiful collection. I've been looking forward. I've literally been saving this all year to work on this during the fall. So the Goose and Gander was one of the quilts that I wanted to make. And then I also was really excited about making the Jolly Bar. I love the pattern that's included. It's just 4 large leaves. So this is one that I have to do. Haven't started this yet. But I also really wanted to make a table runner, and one of the table runners that I've been looking at doing over this fall season was one of Laundry Basket's patterns. I shared that before. They have a trio of table runners that are included in one pattern, and one of those table runners is just nothing but leaves, some large leaves, some small leaves. And I just thought that would be the perfect pattern to use with this sandalwood collection. So when I finished up cutting all the fabrics that I needed for the Goose and Gander, I had some left over from that kit, plus I had some here from my own stash. So I decided to just go ahead and make the cuts that I would need to make that laundry basket table runner, the one with the leaves. But I will be making it a little bit different than what the pattern lists. I decided, since I enjoyed the foundation paper piecing, making the Goose and Gander quilt, I would go ahead and demonstrate the triangles on a roll as I make this table runner. So if you're wanting to make this laundry basket table runner along with me, you really have 2 options. You can either make it as the pattern lists, and they actually use a jelly roll in that pattern. Well, obviously a jelly roll will not work with our triangles on a roll. So you really have 2 choices. You can either make it as the pattern lists, and follow the pattern, or you would want to have a little bit wider fabric. Like I said, you would need a minimum of 6.5 inches wide to make just even one of our triangles on a roll. And again, that will yield 8 half square triangles, but you're going to need to have a little bit more fabric to do this. So if you'd prefer to try your hand at some foundation paper piecing, I would encourage you to go ahead and purchase the triangles on a roll. I'll include a link in the description if this is something you're interested in. It is a product by It's So Emma. It's called Triangles on a Roll, and it's the 2-inch finished half square triangles. So when you cut it, it's going to be 2.5 inches, but obviously once you sew it together, it'll be a final look of 2 inches. So that's the one you're looking for, but I will include this in the link so you can click directly on it. Now, if you're brand new to foundation paper piecing, there are a couple other things that you might want to get. One of them is called the Add a Quarter ruler. And if you notice, it basically has one side that kind of narrows, and it makes it easy to tear the paper there. The other side is more of a ridge. This is definitely the ruler you're going to want to have when you're doing any foundation paper piecing. It makes it so much easier if you have something like this. The other thing you may want to get, now I did not use this with the triangles on a roll, so if you're just getting this, then you may not need to worry about that. But when I did the flying geese, I found the Sew Line glue pen very helpful, and I was able to use that instead of using pins to attach the paper and the fabric together. Now when we do our triangles on a roll, there really is no waste. You're pretty much using almost the entire piece of fabric, and so I do go ahead and use a couple pins to secure this, but if you're doing pretty much anything else in foundation paper, these Sew Line glue pens are very helpful. But I will definitely be using my Add a Quarter ruler, so I do encourage you, if you're planning to join along, go ahead and, if you're getting your triangles on a roll, go ahead and get this too. But for now, let's go ahead and get started making our small blocks for our pumpkin picking pattern. First thing we're going to go ahead and get started making is our small leaf blocks. If you marked all of your fabric using the letters that I shared, then you'll want to go ahead and grab A, B, M, N, O, and P. That should be all the fabric that we'll need to get started making our small leaf blocks. So I've gathered our A squares and our M squares to go ahead and make the half square triangles that we're going to need for our small leaves. So the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is mark a diagonal line right down the center of our background squares. I go ahead and mark a 1/4 inch on either side. That'll actually be our sewing lines. So out of one square, we'll end up getting 2 half square triangles. Now we're going to go ahead and just put these right sides together. And again, these are what are going to be used to make our leaf units, the half square triangles for our leaf units. Right sides together. And then I pin it, and if you notice how far away I'm putting my pin from where my sewing area is, just so that your pins don't get caught up when you're trying to sew. We'll actually need a total of 4 half square triangles. So that's really only 2 of these, but I'm going on ahead and sewing more of these just to give us more variety to choose from. So I ended up selecting all of these different sage green colors for this project as opposed to the orange that are pictured on the pattern. I think it's going to be so pretty. Okay, so I have these ready to go, so we'll go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine and get these sewn down either side. So the diagonal line is going to be our cut line, so we're going to be sewing on either side, 1/4 inch away. All right, I'll go ahead and get my stitch length adjusted down to 1.8. Sometimes I'll do it at 2, but I'll go ahead and do 1.8 for now. All right. Again, I'm trying to stay as close as I can to this line. And if I'm going to err on one side or the other, I'm erring on the side closest to the diagonal line, just so it'll give me plenty of room to actually end up with a 2-inch square when we're done. And you notice I'm just chain piecing these. All right, so I've got a few more here, but because I tend to chain piece like this and make all my leaves at one time, but I'll go ahead and stop here. And we'll go ahead and just start sewing the other side of these. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and use my little cutter. And now we're going to go ahead and sew down the other side, just like we did before. And one more. All right, again, you see I have them all hooked together, so we'll go ahead and get these cut. All right, we'll take these back to the cutting table. We'll go ahead and cut this on that diagonal line that we had cut. So you can see, here's our square right here, our half square triangle. So I'll go ahead and do that to all of these here. All right, I'm going to go get these pressed. All right, we're ready to go ahead and trim down our half square triangles. And I am going to go ahead and use my rotating Olfa mat as well as my trusty block lock ruler. This is the 2.5 inch. However, you can trim it down to as little as literally a 1/2 inch. You can see it's got all the markings there to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these trimmed down. So this one is actually going to be to 2 inches. With this block lock, you literally can just slide it down just like that. So we have our first square trimmed down. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the rest of these. Getting all of these trimmed down to the 2 inches. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set all of our half square triangles aside for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and have us make it the stem of our leaf unit. And this is, so you'll need one 2-inch square. And then you'll also need 2 of the background 1 3/4 inch squares. So I somehow missed this in our cutting. So you'll want to go ahead and make a total of 20 of these 1 3/4 inch squares, and they'll end up getting attached to either side to just literally make a skinny little stem unit here. I'm going to go ahead and put the background in the top right corner first, and then I'm going to use my mini simple folded corners ruler to help me. If you don't have this, then you would just go ahead and mark a line and then sew a 1/4 inch from it. But since I have this, I'm using it. Then I'm going to go ahead and just pin it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just take this and I'm going to sew, again, right along here, a 1/4 inch away right there. And we'll get that pressed and then we'll take a look. All right, so that's the one that we just did right there. I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and we're going to do another one. Same spot now, just flipped around. And again, this is one of those other tools. If you don't have it, you want this tool. Mini Simple Folded Corners Ruler by Doug Lico. This and Block Lock. Anytime I'm going to be working with making half square triangles or folded corners, they are really handy to have. Okay, I'm going to go get this one sewn and pressed and then we'll take a look. All right, to go ahead and make our leaf unit, you'll want to go ahead and put your stem in the bottom right, and then you're going to want to go ahead and select 3 of your 2-inch print squares. And then it's time to go ahead and put some of our half square triangles. So I've got 2 here. 2 here. And then we'll put a background square in the top left. And that right there will make a single leaf unit. And this is where the fun comes in. You can just pick whatever you want to use from all the different cuts that you've made. You can make every leaf a little bit different. Whether you choose to make them one at a time like this, or you want to do chain piecing and stack them. So I'm making this one for the tutorial, but when I make the rest of them, I will do more of an assembly line approach and just make all of my half square triangles at once, and then I'll just start stacking. So if I was doing this right now, I would actually go ahead and make all 10 of my stem units, make all of my half square triangles, and then I would start stacking these on top of each other. And so I'd have a stack of 10 tall of these leaves made, ready to be sewn together. Now that's not as much fun. It's a little more monotonous. So if you prefer to enjoy the process a little bit more, just make them one at a time, just like this. Whatever fits your style. Once you've made your selections and you have all the pieces for your leaf unit, it's time to sew them together. And like everything in quilting just about, we're going to go ahead and just sew these together with a 1/4 inch. And I'll go ahead and chain piece each of these pieces. And then once I get that done, we'll come back and sew these. If you prefer to pin, you can go ahead and put right sides together and pin. However, because these are so small, I honestly think that I can do this just by holding it, and I don't think I'm going to need to pin these. All right, we are ready to go. Because I'm not pinning them, I'm just having to kind of take a minute, make sure it's lined up nicely. And I'll get these cut. All right, so now I have my first unit that I had already sewn together, and now I'm just adding that 3rd square. And I'm going to do that for each of these and chain piece the rest of this leaf unit. All right, I'm going to go get this pressed. All right, everything is pressed, and when I pressed it, I have the first and the third going one direction, and the middle unit, you see, going the opposite direction. And that way, when we go to pin this together, look how nicely that's going to nest. You can see it's going to line up perfectly there. All right, so I'll go ahead and flip it around, and that is the next step, is to get this pinned so we can get this sewn up. So to pin this, I will go ahead and right sides together, and I'm going to go straight to this area to make sure it's nesting nicely first. And I'll put my poke a pin method, make sure it comes right through, and it comes right where we need it to come. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. Poke that pin in, make sure it comes right where it should. And then a pin on this end. All right, I don't think we need any more on that. So I'll go ahead and get this sewn up. I'm going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch away. Then I'll bring it back here for a look. All right, I haven't pressed it yet, but you can see that's sewn together, and look how nicely it's coming together. So we're going to now go ahead and pin just like we did before. We'll go ahead and pin this last section on and get that sewn up. I'm going to go get this sewn up, and then I'll get this pressed, and we'll take a look at our leaf unit. All right, our first leaf unit is done. So you'll want to go ahead and repeat this process. We'll have a total of 12 leaf units when we're done. It'll be 6 at the top and 6 at the bottom. So basically it's going to be 2 rows of these leaf units. So if you're following along, you'll want to go ahead and make 12 of these. Okay, we have one more step to our leaf unit, and that is to add this little small edging piece, little border to this. And if you marked your pieces, this is going to be 1 O and 1 P. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over and get this one sewn on and then pressed. And then I'll go ahead and get this one sewn on and pressed. And then we'll take a look. All right, our leaf unit is done. And this finished unit should be 5.5 inches when it's all said and done. So you'll want to go ahead and trim down. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set this aside so we can get started on making our small star blocks. And if you notice, each of these small star units begin with a 9 patch in the center. So rather than sewing each square individually, I had us go ahead and cut strips to make a strip set. So what I call piece C, I have 2 of these 20-inch strips. What I'm calling Q, the background, that's 1 20-inch strip. And then I have for D, 1 10-inch. And for R, 2 10-inch. This will make basically the strip sets that we're going to need to make all 6 of the 9 patches that we need for this quilt. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do, I'll set these aside a minute. All right, so I have this first strip set done, and I pressed it with the background piece going out basically on either side. All right, we're going to go ahead and repeat this same process with the 10-inch strip. The difference is this time there's only 1 print and 2 backgrounds. I'm going to end up pressing both of these inside toward this, opposite of what we did on the other one. So then that way when I'm making my 9 patches, everything will nest nicely. Okay, so I have both of these now pressed, and again, I pressed this one going towards the print on this center, and on this one, remember, we press away from the center. So that way, when we cut these and start making our 9 patches, those will line up nicely. The next step, though, is to go ahead and get these trimmed down. So we need these cut into 1.5-inch strips. Each of these just cut 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and do this because it's so many. I'm pulling out my stripology ruler here. So first let me get it lined up right where it needs to be. Okay, I'll go ahead and lay it right on top. And I'll go ahead and start cutting these 1.5 inches each. All right, and there we are. You can see how much quicker this is rather than sewing all of these little squares together. Look at how nice that is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat this. We've got a little bit more here. All right, so I've got all of these cut. Now I'm going to repeat this same process with our 10-inch strip. All right, now we're ready to assemble our 9 patches. So we'll basically do 2 of these and 1 of these. And that's our 9 patch. Obviously, I'm going to be repeating this process because we're going to need, I believe I said 6. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we'll need a total of 6 of these. So we'll go ahead and just work on 1 right now though. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all sewn together and press. Just before I take it over there, I just wanted to show you how nice it is. Now that, again, we have these pressed the right direction so these nest nicely. And I will make sure I pin that. And 1 more pin here. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this over and get this sewn up. I'm going to repeat the process with this and then I will press it and we'll take a look. Okay, our 9 patch is done, and of course we've got all of our pieces here to go ahead and repeat the same process to make the remaining 9 patches. I'm going to set these aside for now so we can go ahead and finish making the star points for this one. So we'll need 4 of our S background pieces if you are using the markings that I had given you during cutting. So 4 of those. And then we'll need definitely some E's. So we're actually going to need a total of 8 of our E squares. And again, these are just these little, I believe these are 1.5 inch, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 of our E's. And then we'll need 4 T's. Again, you're not going to find these letters in the pattern. This is something that I just ended up adding to help me. So these are actually going to go in the 4 corners here. But first we're going to focus on making our flying geese. Now these are small flying geese here. So I'm going to set the rest of this aside actually, so we can just focus on that. And I will be using my mini simple folded corners ruler. Boy, I'm wishing I had that flying geese foundation paper for something like this, but we'll make this work. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and trim this down. Now, if you don't have this, you would actually do a diagonal line here. And then you'd be sewing a 1/4 inch from it, and then you'd come back and do the cutting after. But I'm going to go ahead, since I have this tool, one of the advantages is you can go ahead and do the cutting and measuring at once. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the other side at the same time. Now notice I'm changing the orientation, which you do need to do in order for it to fold out the right way. All right, so we're going to repeat this to make all 4 of our flying geese that we're going to need. So I'll go ahead and be working on this. All right, I have all 4 of these flying geese cut and ready to be pressed. I have all the pins in. So I'm going to go ahead and do an assembly line approach to get all of these sewn on both sides, 1/4 inch away. Then I'll get this pressed and we'll take a look. All right, so all the flying geese have been trimmed, and let's see, I wanted to mention the center 9 patch. Make sure you trim this to 3.5 inches, and then the rest of these should align nicely. And then we'll come back through. This is where our little background squares will go in each of the corners, and we're ready to put this together. So I'm going to go ahead and pin these together, this together, and this together. And honestly, since this is wide enough, I think I can just go ahead and pin this side to it as well. So rather than coming back, I'm just going to go ahead and pin the whole thing now. All right, so I've got it pinned now, all the sections. I was able to go ahead and just do it at the same time. So now I'm going to go ahead and get everything sewn together. So I'll start with this side, and then I'll come back and sew this side, and then I'll go ahead and get everything pressed. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to have the center section going out, and then both of these sections going in, so it'll nest nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this sewn and pressed, and we'll take a look. Okay, our little star is getting so close. Now we're ready to go ahead and sew our 3 sections together. So we'll go ahead now and pin. And again, you notice I'm starting right where I can nest these sections together. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing now to this side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and take this and get both sides sewn up, pressed, and we will take a final look at our star. All right, so our stars are done, the 9 patch stars. Now I will tell you, with our next video, we'll actually be coming back to these and putting another rim of star points around this. So this is just the inner block, really. So we've actually still got a little bit more work on these, but let's just focus on this right now. And to be honest, this is the hardest part, right? Because it's the smaller pieces. So we're going to be making a total of 6 of these inner 9 patch inner star squares here. And then we'll be making a total of 12 of our small leaf blocks. So that's what we'll be working on this week. Go ahead and get all of these made up. And then on the next video, we'll focus on, again, doing our rim around this with the outer star points, as well as our big pumpkin blocks. So we'll be working on all of that next week. We'll go ahead and make one final block today, and that's our small pumpkin block. Again, it's going to have star points coming out from it as well, but we'll go ahead and make that. It's just one. All right, to make this pumpkin, we're going to need G. That's going to be our big pumpkin block. Then we're going to need some W's, and this is going to be to make our folded corners for our pumpkin. And then U and F are going to be used to make the stem. And then really this is also going to be used to finish out that stem. So this is really going to all be used for the stem unit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we'll go ahead and move these aside and focus just on our stem. So we'll take our U and our F, and we're literally just going to sew this to this, like that. And then we'll come back through and sew these two side pieces to that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this whole little unit sewn together. All right, our little stem unit is done, and I did need to trim it down. It should be 5.5 inches across. So you will want to make sure you do get that trimmed down, and it should be, it's 2 inches by 5.5 inches. So just make sure you get that trimmed down. All right, we are ready to finish out our little pumpkin. This is such a simple block. So we're just going to go ahead, and again, I'm using the Mini Simple Folded Corners ruler, and we'll fold out these corners here. I've got all 4 corners folded down and ready to be sewn and pressed. All right, so I'll go ahead and work on that, and then we'll take a look. All right, our pumpkin is almost done. We just have one more seam here. So I will go ahead and get this pinned. All right, I'll go ahead and take this over and get this sewn, pressed, and we'll take a look. All right, so all of our small blocks for the pumpkin picking pattern, we've basically done a demonstration of each of those. So we only need one of these, but we will need a total of 6 of these and 12 of these. So that's what we'll be working on this week, is hopefully getting all of these sewn up. So this quilt's going to come together pretty quickly, just in time for us to be able to enjoy it for the rest of the fall and Thanksgiving season. This is an unusual angle, but I wanted to go ahead and show you as much of the Galway Bay pattern as I could on the table right here, and just kind of talk about this as we put it all together. So again, this is only a quarter of it. So if I opened it all the way out, it's actually twice as wide as this is and twice as long as this is. I turned my Galway Bay pattern into a king size to be able to put it on my bed. This one actually was not hard to put together as far as the blocks. It was just a lot of blocks. And when we put this together, the blocks were actually 20 across for this king size, or if you're doing it per the pattern, you had 14 blocks across, because the blocks are really only 5 inches wide. So that's why it was just a little more tedious, because these really weren't big blocks to begin with. And then of course, when you put it together, I'd mentioned before that our lighthouse blocks, which again, the pattern doesn't call for those, but we incorporated those into this pattern. They basically take up 2 rows, right? So what you're basically doing is piecing this in sections and then sewing it to the lighthouse. And so the lighthouse turns out to be 9.5 inches wide to make sure that it aligns with everything else. So as far as my border, I already mentioned, but if you notice, all I have, and again, I have lots of frayed edges right now that I'll have to trim off eventually, but I ended up with just my inner border for my top and my bottom. The pattern actually calls for a border all the way around. So if I wasn't using this for a bed, I would definitely go ahead and do that. But I did want to make sure I got my sides right. So you'll see I have a really wide border over here on the side. And that was to ensure that I had enough of a drop down. I like my quilt on the king size to come on down on either side. So that just means you have to make it extra wide. So that's why I ended up with such a wide border here on the sides. Like I said, I have not basted this. So I've still got a lot of work to do, but I at least got it all put together and it's ready to be basted. But I wanted to go ahead and just show it to you today since I know this is what we've been working on. As far as I'm concerned, we are not done with Nantucket Summer. We will be back to this gorgeous collection, but it'll be in 2026 because we have lots of projects to work on for fall and for the Christmas season. For those that are sewing along with a pumpkin picking pattern, just a reminder, I encourage you keep working on your small blocks. So today we just made one of our pumpkins. We made one of our small stars, but you'll need to make a total of 6 of these. And then our small leaves, we made 1 today, but you will need a total of 12 of these. So I encourage you, if you are sewing along, be working on that this week, and we'll be ready to finish up all of these blocks on our next video, and that is for our pumpkin picking pattern, and I'll make sure to include that in the description. If you're just joining us and you'd like to sew along, I'll include a link to that pattern so you can join us. I also encourage you, if you are interested in making the laundry basket table runner pattern with us, and this is the one with all the leaves, I am including a link to this pattern from Laundry Basket Quilts. Again, it's that trio of fall table runners. We'll actually be making the one with the leaves together, and I encourage you, if you'd like to join us, go ahead and get the pattern. And if you're interested in doing the foundation paper piecing as opposed to the way it lists it in the pattern, you will want to go ahead and get triangles on a roll, and I'll include this in the description as well. But this is the one that will make 2-inch finished squares. So you'll want to go ahead and get a roll of this, and if you don't already have the add a quarter ruler, you'll want to grab one of these along with this. So we'll be ready to go using the triangles on a roll paper, which again is the foundation paper piecing method. So if you've ever wanted to give this a try, now would be a great time to check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time, happy quilting.